My sister Claire loves to host celebrations, especially when she's the one being celebrated. Tonight, we were at Meridian, the best seafood restaurant in the city. The dinner was for her twin daughters, Sophia and Emma, who had just been accepted to college. "You must try the lobster platter," Claire announced proudly to the table, beaming at her perfect girls. My son Tyler, 14, looked up from his menu. A quiet kid, he asked softly, "Could I have the lobster too?" Claire's smile tightened. "That's a bit expensive, Tyler," she said in her sugary sweet voice. "And tonight is really about the girls." A moment later, our waitress, Ashley, came to take our order. When she reached my son, Claire cut in before he could speak. "Just tap water for him," she said to the waitress, not to Tyler. "We don't feed extras." Extras. The word hung in the air, heavy and cruel. I watched my son stare down at the white tablecloth, blinking fast to hold back tears. I looked straight at my sister and let the silence stretch before giving her a small, steady nod. My voice was cold and clear. "Noted." Claire smiled, thinking she had put me in my place. She was wrong. I was not done. Not even close. Before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me where in the world you're watching from. That word extras stung me, but it didn't surprise me. In my family, I was always the extra. My sister Claire is 2 years older than me. Growing up, she was the star. I was her shadow. Claire got straight A's, I got B's and C's. Claire played piano at recitals, I liked to draw in my sketchbook. A waste of time, according to my mother. "Amanda, why can't you be more like your sister?" my mother, Patricia, would ask at the dinner table. "Claire has a future. What are you going to do? Doodle?" Claire was perfect, pretty, smart, and always doing exactly what our mother wanted. She went to a good college, met a rich man, and got married in a grand white wedding. I was her maid of honor, wearing a dress she picked, an ugly peach color that made me feel like a pale ghost standing beside her. My path was different. I was the directionless one. I didn't want to go to a big university. I liked to cook. I got a job at a small bakery, and I loved it. The smell of bread at 5 a.m., the feel of the dough in my hands. My mother hated it. "You're a baker?" she would say, as if the word tasted bad. "Amanda, that's what people do when they have no other options. You have to be someone." When I was 23, I got pregnant. It wasn't planned. The father was a man I thought I loved, but he wasn't ready to be a dad. He left. I was alone. When I told my family, my mother's face didn't show anger or sadness. It showed embarrassment. "What will I tell people?" she whispered. That was her first question. Claire was worse. She looked at me with pity. "Well, Amanda, I guess you've really made a mess of things. Don't worry, I'm sure I can find some of my old maternity clothes for you." I wasn't a mess. I was scared, but I was also happy. When Tyler was born, I looked at him and knew I wasn't directionless anymore. I had a purpose. He was my purpose. But my family treated me like a charity case. Every Christmas, Claire would hand me a check. "For Tyler," she'd say too loudly. "I know how hard it is for you." She'd give my son hand-me-down clothes from her friends' kids, often stained. My mother would visit my small apartment and tisk at my furniture. "This couch is so worn out, Amanda. It's just sad." They treated me like I was small, like I was barely scraping by. To them, I was poor Amanda, the single mom, the failed daughter, the one who worked in kitchens. What they didn't know was that I wasn't just working in kitchens. I was learning. I saved every dollar. I worked double shifts. I learned how to manage inventory, create menus, and run a business. When Tyler was 6, I had saved enough to buy a used food truck. It was old and rusty, but I painted it myself and called it the Foster Kitchen. Every day, I woke up at 4 a.m., got Tyler ready for school, dropped him off, and then drove my truck to a busy street corner. I cooked all day, picked Tyler up, and helped him with homework in the truck. We would count the money in the cash box together. Some nights, I only made $50. I was so tired my bones ached, but I never quit. One truck became two. The food trucks became a small cafe. The cafe got a great review in the local paper, and people started coming. Really coming. I opened a second cafe. Then, 18 months ago, I saw that Meridian was for sale. It was the biggest restaurant in the city, the most famous. But it was failing. The old owners didn't know how to run it. I did. I took the biggest risk of my life. I sold all my cafes, used every penny I had, and bought Meridian. I hired chef Michael Reyes, rebuilt the menu, retrained the staff, and worked 20-hour days. Tyler slept on a cot in the office. For the first 6 months, I thought I was going to fail, but I didn't. Tonight, Meridian is the most successful restaurant in the city. I own 2 others now, too. I am not poor Amanda. I am a business owner. I am a success. But my family never saw it. They never saw the work, the sleepless nights, or the sacrifice. They never asked. Why would they? In their story, I was already the extra, the failure. It was easier for them to believe I was struggling. It made Claire feel more successful. It made my mother feel right about me. So when Claire called tonight, I let her believe it. Amanda, she'd said on the phone, I'm taking the family to Meridian to celebrate the girls. It's very expensive, but you should come. It's my toot. Of course, you and Tyler should see how nice things can be. My treat. I agreed to come. I let her make the reservation. I let her walk into my restaurant as if she owned the place. And now sitting at this table, listening to her call my son an extra, I felt that old familiar coldness. I felt like I was 15 again, the invisible girl who didn't matter. But I wasn't 15 anymore, and I wasn't invisible. The dinner was painful, a perfect picture of my family. My sister Claire and my mother Patricia sat at the center of the table, talking loudly and laughing. They were the main characters. My nieces, Sophia and Emma, were the supporting cast, perfect copies of their mother, occasionally glancing at their phones. They talked about their new college plans. The dorms at the Honors College are just divine. They look like little private apartments. Oh, that's wonderful, sweetheart, my mother said, her eyes shining. She looked at my nieces with a warmth I had never seen before. Not once. Not even when I brought Tyler home from the hospital. Tyler and I were the audience, sitting quietly at the edge of the table. No one spoke to us. My son is a good kid, kind and observant. He tried to join the conversation. That's really cool, Sophia, he said, looking up from his glass of tap water.
What are you going to study? Claire spoke over him without even noticing. Oh, Mother, you should have seen the acceptance letter. The dean himself signed it. He said Emma's essay on leadership was one of the best he's ever read. Tyler's face fell. He looked down and took another sip of water. I watched him try to shrink, to disappear, just so they would stop hurting him. A slow, hot anger built in my chest, an old anger I had carried my whole life. Ashley, a waitress, returned. Are we ready to order some appetizers? She asked. Yes, Claire said, immediately taking charge. We'll have 3 orders of the oysters Rockefeller, the grand charcuterie board, and let's do the calamari too, extra crispy. Ashley nodded, writing it all down. Wonderful, and for you, ma'am? She asked me. I'm fine for now. And for the young man? She asked kindly, smiling at Tyler. Before he could answer, Claire waved her hand dismissively. Oh, he's fine. He can wait for dinner. Ashley looked confused. No appetizer for him, ma'am? That's right, Claire said, her voice firm. The discussion was over. Ashley glanced at me. I gave her a small, calm nod. It wasn't her fault. I would handle this. The appetizers arrived. A feast. Plates of oysters, a huge board of meats and cheeses, and a steaming bowl of calamari. The food was set in the center of the table, right in front of Claire and my mother. They began to eat, passing plates among themselves. Mom, this cheese is amazing, Emma said. Try the oysters, girls. They're a delicacy, my mother added. No one offered anything to Tyler. He sat still, hands in his lap, watching them eat. I watched too, silent, unmoving. Tyler noticed a small basket of bread near him. Slowly, he reached out to take a piece. Claire saw him and laughed. It was a light, cruel sound. Oh, Honey, no, she said, pulling the basket away and sliding it closer to her daughters. You should save your appetite. We don't want you too full for dinner, if you even have any. I looked at Claire. He didn't have an appetizer, Claire. She shrugged, picking up an oyster. He can eat at home later, she said casually, as if he weren't even there. This is a celebration. It's for the winners. That was it. Something in my chest clicked. A small, cold sound. The sound of a lock turning. The sound of a door closing for the last time. I looked at my sister, at her happy, careless face. She was enjoying her power. She was enjoying making my son feel small. She had been doing it to me all my life. She was the winner, I was the loser. She was the main character, I was the extra. But this wasn't her house. This wasn't her world. This was mine. I sat back in my chair and took a sip of my own water, sparkling water. She hadn't even noticed. I waited. I let them eat. I let them laugh. I let them enjoy their moment. It was the last one they were going to have. I just had to wait for the main course. When it arrived, it was a performance. Ashley and another server approached the table with quiet precision, setting down each plate with practiced grace. 4 beautiful lobster platters gleamed under the warm restaurant lights. Bright red shells, tender white meat, small cups of golden melted butter. One was placed in front of Claire, one before my mother, one for Sophia and one for Emma. Then Ashley placed a small house salad in front of me. I had ordered it deliberately. I wasn't hungry. She looked at Tyler. His place was empty, just a glass of tap water. He stared at the lobsters, hunger in his eyes. He was 14, growing, and being starved in public by his own family. My mother, my sister, and my nieces didn't notice. They were too busy. "Oh, it's beautiful," my mother said. "Emma, take a picture of me with the lobster," Sophia said, posing with her fork. They dug in, cracking shells, dipping meat into butter, moaning over how delicious it was. "I told you, Mother, the best in the city." I watched them eat their $90 plates. I watched my son watching them. He was trying so hard not to cry, trying so hard to be small. A rage so cold it felt peaceful washed over me. And then, through the glass of the main dining room, I saw him, Chef Michael Reyes, exiting the kitchen, tall, in his spotless white chef coat, with a serious expression. My head chef, my first hire, the best in the state, the one I'd stolen from a famous restaurant in New York. He was doing his nightly floor check, walking from table to table, asking guests about their meals. This was my moment. Claire was in the middle of a story about her daughter's college essay. My mother was smiling and nodding. I didn't say, "Excuse me." I didn't wait for a pause. I simply raised my hand. It was a small, calm gesture, but firm. "Chef," I called out. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. It cut clean through Claire's story. The table froze. Forks stopped midair. Claire looked at me, irritated. "Amanda, what are you doing? Don't bother the staff. It's rude." "Honestly, Amanda, what could you possibly need? Don't make a fuss." They thought I was going to complain. They thought I was going to embarrass them. Chef Michael glanced over, saw my raised hand, and began walking toward our table. He looked professional but slightly puzzled. He didn't recognize me right away. I was dressed simply, just another woman at dinner. He arrived and said, "Ma'am, is everything all right with your meal this evening?" I gave him a small, warm smile, one he'd seen before during kitchen meetings. His eyes widened as recognition hit. "Miss Foster," he said, his voice dropping in surprise. "I'm so sorry, I didn't see you there. Is everything—" I raised a hand to stop him. "It's perfectly fine, Michael. I'm just here for a quiet family dinner." I turned to my family. They were staring, faces blank with confusion. "Miss Foster?" Claire whispered. I smiled sweetly. "Chef Michael," I said. "I'd like to introduce my family." I gestured to my mother. "This is my mother, Patricia Thompson." Then to my sister Claire. Finally to my nieces, and my nieces Sophia and Emma. Michael nodded, politely. I paused. placing my hand gently on my son's shoulder, his small frame trembling slightly under my touch. "And this is," I said, my voice strong and proud, "this is my son, Tyler." Then I turned back to Michael, ensuring my voice carried to the nearby tables. "Michael, I was just telling my family what incredible work you and the team have done here at Meridian." I glanced around a packed, elegant restaurant dining room. It's my favorite restaurant in the city. When I turned back, their faces were pale. "Which is why," I said, calmly but clearly, "I bought it." Silence fell. Deep, heavy, absolute. The only sound was the distant clink of cutlery from other tables. Claire's fork, loaded with lobster meat, froze mid-air. My mother's wine glass halted halfway to her lips. Claire's mouth opened and closed. "What?" she finally whispered. "Yes, Claire," I said evenly. "I bought Meridian 18 months ago. I own this building. I own the kitchen. I own the chairs you're sitting on." I smiled faintly. "Welcome to my restaurant." The whole room heard it. Whispers spread immediately. The nearby tables went silent, all eyes on us. They'd seen Chef Michael snap to attention. They'd heard Miss Foster. Now they were watching. I noticed Ashley, our waitress, standing near the service station with a silver tray in her hands. Her face was pale, eyes wide, replaying the evening in her mind. The tap water order, the extra comment. She looked horrified. I gave her a small, almost invisible nod. "You're fine.
This isn't about you." Then I turned back to my sister. Claire was stammering, her face bright red. "Amanda, I didn't know you never, why didn't you tell me?" That was the question. Why didn't you tell me? I leaned forward, keeping my voice low but sharp as a blade. "Tell you what, Claire? Tell you that I wasn't the failure you all decided I was?" I looked at my mother, then back at Claire. "When was I supposed to tell you? Was I supposed to interrupt you while you were commenting on how sad my apartment was? Or maybe when you handed me your stained hand-me-downs for Tyler?" I paused. My eyes locked on hers. "When exactly in the last 10 years did you ever ask me one single question about my life?" Her mouth opened, but no words came out. "You never asked," I said simply. "You never asked what I did. You never asked how I was. You were too busy looking down on me. You never thought to look at me. You just assumed. You assumed I was still poor Amanda. You assumed I was struggling. You assumed you could walk into this restaurant, my restaurant, and act like a queen." I lifted my chin toward my son. "And you assumed you could treat my child like he was nothing." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth carried enough weight. "When you arrived tonight, you told my employee, Ashley over there, just tap water for him. We don't feed extras." The words hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. "So let's be very, very clear," I said coldly. "You came into my business, you ordered my most expensive food, and then you told my staff not to feed my son." "Amanda," my mother hissed finally, "that's enough. You're making a terrible scene. People are staring." She was right. They were. I didn't care. My mother wasn't apologizing. She was trying to control me, protect her image. She was embarrassed. I looked at her, this woman who had spent my whole life making me feel small. "A scene?" I said quietly. "You're worried about a scene? All my life, you and Claire taught me my place. You taught me that there are main characters and there are extras. Claire and her perfect girls are the main characters. I'm the extra. Tyler is the extra." I looked from my mother to my sister. Their faces were pale with shame. I smiled, not kindly. "But you missed one important lesson. You forgot to tell me one thing tonight." I leaned forward slightly. "The extras own the building." The silence that followed was almost physical. Claire's face turned blotchy red. My mother, Patricia, looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her lips formed a small, shocked "oh."
She was staring at me, but I knew she wasn't really seeing me. She was seeing a problem, a scandal, a crack in her perfect world. I turned away from them. I didn't care about their shock or their shame. That was their burden now. I had carried mine for 38 years. I turned to Chef Michael, who still stood there, the image of professionalism, waiting for direction. "Michael," I said warmly, all the ice gone from my voice. I placed a hand on my son's back. His small shoulders trembled beneath his shirt. He was staring down at the table. "My son would like to order now," I said. I looked at Tyler. His dark eyes lifted to mine, full of confusion and a flicker of fear, but beneath that I saw something new. A spark. "Tyler," I said softly, "you can have anything you want. What would you like?" He looked at me, then at Chef Michael, tall, confident, commanding in white, then at his aunt, who looked ready to faint. He swallowed, his voice a whisper. "The lobster platter?" he asked, like he wasn't sure if it was allowed. The love that rushed through me was so strong it almost stole my breath. He was a good boy. He had been insulted all night, yet he remained polite. He was still asking for permission. I nodded. "Yes," I said. Then I turned to Chef Michael, my voice firm again. "Chef, my son will have the lobster platter." Michael nodded, his expression serious. "Right away, Miss Foster." "Wait," I said. Michael stopped. I wasn't finished. This wasn't just about a lobster. This was about erasing the insult. This was about replacing topwater and the word extra. "I want the special reserve sides." Michael raised his eyebrow. He knew what that meant. The truffle mac and cheese, the grilled asparagus with imported hollandaise, the potato gratin with Gruyere. Michael smiled, a small, knowing smile. "An excellent choice." "And Michael," I added, "please bring your best off-menu dish. Whatever you're proudest of tonight, I want my son to try it. I'll make something just for him." He bowed his head slightly. "It will be my pleasure." Then he turned and walked toward the kitchen. He didn't just walk, he moved with purpose. I turned back to my cable. The four of them, Claire, Patricia, Sophia, and Emma, were just staring. They hadn't touched their lobsters. Their expensive, buttery meals were getting cold. "Amanda," my mother began again, her voice shaking with anger. This is wasteful. It's childish." "Is it?" I asked, picking up my water glass. I thought it was just dinner. "You're trying to humiliate us," Claire said, her voice low and trembling. She was close to tears. "No," I said calmly, taking a sip. "You're humiliating yourselves. I just turned on the lights." You bitch," Claire whispered, her words dripping with venom. I looked at her. I didn't even feel angry anymore, just tired. "You called my son an extra, Claire. You told him he couldn't have bread. You did it in front of everyone to make yourself feel big and to make him feel small. And you did it in my restaurant." I set my glass down. "So call me whatever you want. I'm done. We're done." We sat in that terrible frozen silence for nearly 10 minutes. It felt like 10 years. The other tables had gone back to eating, but I could feel them watching. Claire and my mother didn't touch their lobsters. They just sat there, paralyzed. Their lobsters looked like red plastic toys on their plates. Then the kitchen doors swung open. It wasn't one server, it was 3. Chef Michael led the way, followed by Ashley, the waitress, and another server named Ben. They moved in a quiet procession. They arrived at our table. "If you could make some room, please," Michael said, not to me, but to Claire. Claire and her daughters hurried to move their purses and plates aside. Michael and his team began setting the table in front of Tyler. First, Michael himself placed a large, steaming lobster platter, the biggest from the tank. Then Ashley placed 3 white bowls. The truffle mac and cheese, she set it down. The potato gratin. The grilled asparagus. Then Ben stepped forward carrying a plate under a silver dome. "And from the chef," he said. He lifted the dome to reveal a perfectly seared foie gras atop toasted brioche, finished with dark cherry sauce, the most expensive appetizer on the menu. The space in front of my son was no longer empty. It overflowed, a feast fit for a king. Tyler stared at the food, his eyes wide. He looked at me. I smiled and leaned close so only he could hear.
"Eat as much as you want," I whispered. "It's your restaurant, too." Tyler picked up his fork, still hesitant. "It's okay," I said. "Start with the lobster." He picked up the small fork, dug into the tail, dipped it in the melted butter, and took a bite. His eyes closed, and he smiled, a real, happy 14-year-old smile. "It's good, Mom," he said. "I know," I replied. I watched him eat. The mac and cheese, the chef's special, every bite. He wasn't an extra anymore. He wasn't background. He was the only person at that table who mattered. Across from us, Claire set down her fork and pushed her cold lobster away. She couldn't eat. My mother stared at her hands. I watched my son eat the best meal of his life, surrounded by the same family who had tried to starve him. It was a terrible, beautiful moment, and it was mine. Tyler ate slowly, with the focused seriousness only teenage boys have. He finished the lobster, nearly all the mac and cheese, and even tried the asparagus, though he made a small face. I watched him the entire time. I didn't look at Claire. I didn't look at my mother. They didn't exist. The world had shrunk to just me and my son. The rest of the table was a graveyard. Cold, half-eaten lobsters, untouched wine, and silence. Not peaceful silence, but angry silence. A silence born from a deep, festering wound. When Tyler was finally done, he sat back and placed his napkin on the table. "I'm Phil, Mom," he said softly. "Good," I said. I finally looked up. The four of them looked broken. Statues of misery. This was the end. It was time to go. I stood. My chair made a soft scraping sound on the floor. A quiet note of finality. Tyler stood with me. Claire looked up, her eyes red. "Amanda," she said weakly, "where are you going?" "We're leaving, Claire." "What? What about—" she stammered. "What about the celebration? The coffee, dessert?" "The celebration is over," I said. I looked at my mother. "You two can stay. Have dessert. Talk about the scene I made. But we're leaving." "Amanda, please," my mother said, her voice cracking as she tried to sound firm. "Don't do this. We're family." That word, family. I almost laughed. Family. Is that what this is? You sat there and watched your daughter call your grandson an extra. You watched him be denied bread. You said nothing. You cared more about what strangers thought than about your own blood. That's not family, Mother. That's just sad. I turned to Claire. "And you? You wanted to treat me to dinner? You wanted to show me how nice things could be. You wanted to feel superior. You wanted me to stay as poor Amanda so you could remain the successful Claire." I let that hang in the air for a moment. "Well, you got your wish. You're at Meridian. This is as nice as it gets." I paused, then asked the question. "The total for this table is about $400, not including the dishes my son had, of course. Those are on the house." I looked from Claire to my mother. "Shall I comp it all as a family discount? Or," I smiled faintly, "would you like to pay for your own meal?" This was the part that mattered. This was the boundary. Claire's face drained of all color. It shifted from blotchy red to a sickly pale white. I, she stammered. I assumed. You assumed I'd pay. I finished for her. You assumed I would just take it. You assumed you could insult me, insult my child, and I would still be grateful. That I would still pick up your $400 check the same way you assumed my son didn't deserve a meal.
We don't have that kind of money," my mother suddenly burst out. It was a cry, desperate and raw. I stared at her. So that was it. That was the other truth. They were living a lie. Claire's rich husband, her perfect life, it was all a house of cards. They had come here to my restaurant expecting me, the failure, the charity case, to pay for their lobster feast. The pity I felt was brief. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. "So, maybe," I said quietly, "you should have ordered more modestly." I looked directly at Claire. "Like you told my son to." I let the words land. I watched them hit her. I watched her flinch as if I'd physically slapped her. It was done. I turned and saw Ashley, the waitress, standing a few feet away, trying not to watch but unable to look away. I gestured to her. "Ashley," I said, my voice professional again, "please bring the check to this table." Ashley nodded. "Yes, ma'am." I turned back to my family. "Good night, Mother. Good night, Claire." I placed my hand on Tyler's back. "Let's go, honey." I didn't look back. I walked away. Tyler walked beside me, quiet, but walking tall. I heard my mother say my name one last time. "Amanda!" It wasn't a plea. It was a command. I kept walking. We passed through the main dining room. I could feel the eyes of the other diners on my back. They were watching. They had seen it all, the extra being served a feast, and the family being left with the bill. I didn't feel embarrassed. I didn't feel ashamed. For the first time in my life, watching away from my family, I felt proud. I felt like a main character. I pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped out into the cool night air. The whispers didn't follow us. We left them behind, trapped in the restaurant, trapped at that table, with the cold lobster and the $400 bill. I didn't take Tyler to the car. I didn't take him home. I put my hand on his shoulder and steered him to the left, down a small, private hallway away from the main entrance. "Where are we going, Mom?" he asked. "To my office. But we're going to make a stop first." I led him to a heavy, unmarked wooden door. I used my key. We stepped inside. It was the private dining room, the chef's table. A beautiful, intimate space, paneled in dark wood, with a single round table in the center set for two. It was quiet. The thick walls blocked out all the noise from the main restaurant. It was a bubble of peace. "Have a seat, honey," I said. Tyler sat down, glancing around. "Wow, this is nice." "It is. I have a lot of important meetings in here, but tonight it's just for us." I picked up the phone on the wall and dialed the kitchen. "Michael," I said. "Yes, Miss Foster?" "Could you send up 2 of the chocolate lava cakes and 2 glasses of milk?" "The good whole milk, right away," he said. I hung up and sat across from my son. The silence in the room was warm, safe. The complete opposite of the silence at the other table. That silence was full of anger and shame. This one was full of peace. We sat there for a moment. I looked at my son. He was growing up. A few new freckles dotted his nose. He had handled tonight with such grace. He had been strong. He spoke first. "Mom," he looked down at the tablecloth. "Why did Aunt Claire call me an extra?" He asked it so simply. It was a real question. From a 14-year-old boy who couldn't understand how an adult, his own aunt, could be so cruel. "Oh, honey," I said, reaching across the table and placing my hand on his. "That has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with her." "I don't get it." "Some people, Tyler," I said, "need to feel big. And the only way they know how to feel big is by making others feel small. They think the world is a movie. They think they're the main character, the star, and everyone else is just an extra, someone in the background. But we're family. To people like your aunt and your grandma," I said gently. "Family is a competition.
It's about who's winning, who has the most money, who has the perfect life. Tonight, they were trying to show me that they were winning and I was losing. But you're not.
He said, "You own this whole place. They were eating your food." I smiled. I know, and they know that now too. But for a long time, baby, they treated me like an extra too. When I was a kid, when I had you, they thought I was a failure. They liked me that way. It made them feel better about themselves. "That's stupid," he said. I laughed, a real, honest laugh. It felt good. "Yeah," I said. "It is stupid. It's a sad way to live." I squeezed his hand. "But you need to listen to me. You are not an extra, Tyler. You are not a background character. You are the main character in your story. You are the most important person in mine. Do you understand that?" He nodded. He looked up at me, his eyes clear. "Yeah, I get it." The door opened and Ashley entered carrying a tray. On it were 2 lava cakes steaming with scoops of vanilla bean ice cream and 2 tall glasses of cold milk. She set them down and looked at me, her eyes respectful. "Will there be anything else, Miss Foster?" she asked. "No, Ashley," I said softly. "This is perfect. Thank you. You can go home for the night. You handled yourself perfectly," I told her. She smiled. "Thank you. Good night, ma'am." "Good night, Tyler." "Good night," Tyler said. She left and closed the door behind her. We were alone again. We dug into our dessert. We laughed. We talked about school. We talked about a movie we wanted to see. We didn't mention Claire or Patricia. They weren't in this room. They weren't allowed in this room. This room was ours, quiet, peaceful, and safe. And it was the best meal I'd ever had. As we ate our dessert slowly, I glanced through the small one-way glass window in the door. From our private bubble, I could see the main restaurant outside. Our old table was a mess. Ashley had delivered the bill. My mother, Patricia, was holding it like it was a snake that had bitten her. Claire was on her feet, waving her hands, yelling. My mother was yelling back. I couldn't hear their words, but I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they were saying. "How could you let her do this? This is your fault. What do we do now? I don't have this kind of money. You're the one who ordered the lobster." It was ugly. It was exactly who they were. They weren't sad for what they'd done to my son. They weren't sorry for their cruelty. They were angry because they'd been caught, terrified because they had to pay a bill. I watched them. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel happy. I felt nothing. It was like watching a silent movie, 2 people waving their arms, small, bitter people. They weren't my family anymore. They were just people. "What are they doing, Mom?" Tyler asked, watching too. "They're arguing. They're deciding who has to pay the bill. Is Aunt Claire really not going to pay?" "Oh, she'll pay. She's too proud to walk out. She cares too much about what people think." And I was right. After a few more minutes of silent, furious fighting, Claire snatched the bill from my mother and threw her credit card on the table. Ashley swooped in, took the card, and disappeared. When she returned, Claire scribbled her signature with angry strokes. Then they stood, gathered their things. My nieces, Sophia and Emma, looked like they wanted to vanish. My mother and Claire didn't look at each other. They just walked out, shoulders tight, heads down. They didn't look proud. They didn't look like winners. They looked small. We stayed in the private room a while longer, letting the air settle. After about 15 minutes, there was a soft knock. It was Ashley. She had her coat on. "I'm sorry to bother you, Miss Foster." "It's no bother, Ashley. What is it?" I wanted to let you know they paid the bill and left." "Thank you," I said. Ashley hesitated, looking uneasy. They also asked me to tell you something." I waited. "They asked me to tell you that they're sorry." I looked at Ashley, this kind young woman who worked for me. My mother and sister had made her their messenger. I sighed. "Did they say it to me, Ashley, or through me?" Her face said it all. "Through you, ma'am." I nodded. "Then it doesn't count." I took a slow sip of milk.
A real apology, Ashley, is when someone looks you in the eye and says they're sorry for what they did. They're not sorry for what they did. They're sorry because I own this restaurant. They're sorry they got embarrassed. That's not an apology. That's damage control. Ashley nodded, understanding. Yes, ma'am. She paused, then added softly, for what it's worth, that was incredible. I've worked in restaurants for a long time. I've seen families like that. They deserved it. I looked at her, grateful for her kindness. No one deserves to be humiliated, Ashley. Not even them. But they did need a reminder. They needed a lesson. Well, she said with a small smile, I think they learned it. She smiled again. Good night, Miss Foster. Good night, Ashley. Have a safe walk home. She closed the door and I was alone with Tyler again. He was looking at me. Mom, why did you say that? That no one deserves to be humiliated. Because it's true. I know what that feels like. They've spent my whole life making me feel that way. It's a terrible feeling. I didn't enjoy doing that to them, Tyler. I did it because I had to protect you and myself. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to stand up and say clearly, no, not anymore. He nodded slowly. He understood. Okay, I said, standing up.
I think we're done here. Let's go home. We left our quiet, peaceful room, walked down the empty hallway and out the private back door to the parking garage. We got in my car. It was late. The city lights blurred past as we drove. The streets were quiet, and so were we. But it was a comfortable silence, the kind that exists between two people who've been through something together. We were a team. Tyler looked out the window. The glow from passing streetlights moved across his face. He looked older. Mom, he said finally, breaking the silence. Yeah, honey. Did you really buy 3 restaurants? I smiled. I did. This one and 2 smaller bistros downtown. Wow, he said softly. That's pretty cool. He was quiet for a minute, thinking. He was seeing me differently, not just as mom, but as a person, a boss, someone who owned her world. You know, he said, Grandma Lucille would have been really proud of you. My heart caught. I hadn't thought about Grandma Lucille in years. She was my father's mother, the one who taught me to cook, who believed in me. The opposite of Patricia. Warm, kind, tough. She'd passed when Tyler was a baby. You remember Grandma Lucille? I asked. A little, he said. She smelled like cinnamon. She always let me stir the pot. And I remember she always stood up for you when Grandma Patricia was mean. My eyes filled with tears. I blinked hard so I could see the road. Yeah, honey, I said softly. She did. I could picture her warm kitchen, her hands dusted with flour. She gave me my first cookbook. I could still hear her voice. Don't you let them make you small, Amanda girl. Your mother and sister, they're all polish and no shine. You're all shine. Don't you ever let them dull you. And I had let them dull me for years, but not anymore. She would have loved watching you eat that lobster tonight, I said with a small laugh. Tyler grinned. Yeah, she would have, but I think she'd have loved watching you tell Aunt Clare off even more. I laughed, a real, full laugh. You're probably right. We pulled into the driveway. I turned off the car. The garage was dark. I looked at my son. I'm proud of you, Tyler. You were strong tonight. I was scared, he admitted. I know. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you're scared and stay strong anyway. You did that. He smiled. You were brave too, Mom. We were brave together. I looked out through the windshield at the closed garage door. I thought about my sister, my mother. I wondered if they were home. Still yelling, still blaming. Then I realized, with a strange, peaceful lightness, I didn't care. They could yell, they could rage, They could be embarrassed. It had nothing to do with me anymore. They were no longer my problem. They had spent my whole life teaching me to know my place, to stay quiet, to stay small, to be the extra. I looked at my house. I thought of my restaurants. I looked at my beautiful, strong, kind son. Some people learn to know their place, I said quietly. Tyler turned to me. What, Mom? I smiled. And some people, I said, learn to own it. We got out of the car and went inside. The house was quiet. For the first time in 38 years, I felt true peace, the kind that comes when a war is finally over. I was full. My son was full. Our hearts were full. And no one could ever take that from us again.